bull that you want something positive to look forward to. It's kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it?
Amy and Brian has their court date in a few days.
For years, the world believed it knew Amy Slaton. She was the girl from Dixon, Kentucky, whose laughter echoed across reality TV screens, whose tears felt personal, whose struggles were painfully relatable. When 1,000-Pound Sisters premiered, Amy wasn't just a cast member on another TLC show. She became a symbol of transformation, a symbol of a woman trying to claim her life back, a symbol of someone caught between who she was taught to be and who she desperately wanted to become. For millions watching, she was not a celebrity. She was human. And that is exactly why what followed feels so heavy, so tragic, so deeply sad. But stories like Amy's rarely stay simple. The same openness that made her beloved also made her exposed. The same vulnerability that made her relatable also made her fragile. And the same spotlight that made her successful also made her break. Not all wounds bleed in public. Some tear slowly, quietly, under soft lights and production schedules, under contracts and expectations, under the weight of a world that demands one more season, one more episode, one more emotional breakdown on camera. To understand what happened in 2025, one must step back and see the years leading into it. Because tragedy does not arrive suddenly, it grows, root by root, moment by moment, until it is too large to contain. Amy's journey began long before cameras arrived. She grew up in a household where food was comfort, survival, celebration, and escape. Poverty left very few gentle choices. Emotional hunger built habits, and habits became identity. By the time the world met Amy, she had already spent years fighting her own reflection. But in those early seasons, something inside her flickered with hope. She wanted to lose weight, to become a mother, to feel free inside her own skin. And when she talked about these dreams, her voice shook not from fear, but from believing. Maybe for the first time that she deserved something better. When she became a mother, that hope grew even brighter. Her love for her children was undeniable. The tenderness in her voice when she spoke about them was different from the tone she used with anyone else. The world saw that love and held on to it. They rooted for her. They cheered when she had surgery. They clapped when she lost weight. They celebrated when she found independence. But beneath the applause, new pressures formed. The more progress she made, the more the world expected. The more the world expected, the heavier everything became. Reality TV does not allow healing. It only allows filming. And so, even as Amy was becoming a mother, she was also becoming a storyline. Her marriage began cracking long before episode scripts noticed. The weight of two recovering lives, hers and her husband's, was heavier than either could hold. When the relationship fractured, it did not shatter cleanly. It crumbled in silence first. In sighs, in long nights. In arguments that didn't need to be spoken aloud to be understood. Eventually, the divorce came, and the world watched it like entertainment. But it wasn't entertainment for Amy. It was a loss, a very real one. She became a single mother on camera, not privately, not gently, but while millions watched, commented, clipped, judged, debated, and posted. And when the warmth of attention turned colder, that's when the cracks deepened. The online world can be cruel in ways no one prepares you for. Comments dissected her body, her choices, her motherhood, her home, her voice, her pain. Strangers spoke about her as if she were an object, as if she were not someone who bled, someone who cried when the cameras turned off, someone who stayed awake at night wondering if she would ever be enough. Pressure does not have to scream to destroy. Sometimes it just whispers relentlessly. By the time season 7 concluded, exhaustion had settled into her bones. The world saw her less frequently online. The excitement in her videos dimmed. The energy in her face faded. There were moments in her eyes, brief, king moments where the spark that had once driven her seemed to flicker weakly. And then came 2025, the year that marked the fracture. Season 8 was supposed to be hopeful, reflective, redemptive. The producers framed it as Amy's rebuilding, her reclaiming of identity and motherhood and emotional peace. But the reality behind the scenes was far more tangled. Contracts require commitment, and commitment requires stability. And Amy was not stable, not emotionally, not physically, and certainly not mentally. Then came the alleged legal incident. Reports surfaced, unconfirmed, disputed, debated. Whispered through entertainment news and online speculation that Amy had been arrested for possession of illicit substances. The exact details remain obscured behind sealed documents and vague statements. No final legal judgment has been declared, but the shockwave was immediate. For TLC, this didn't just represent personal crisis, it represented production collapse. Season 8 was already invested in, money had been spent, schedules had been set, marketing campaigns had been prepared, and suddenly, the anchor of the season, the emotional core, was unable to film. And so Amy withdrew. Not dramatically, not defiantly, but as someone who was breaking. Yet to a network, breaking is not an excuse. It is a breach. According to industry insiders and circulating legal claims, TLC responded not with comfort or empathy, but with paperwork, a lawsuit. Approximately $1 million, citing breach of contract, production losses, and damages. The show was suspended. Not canceled, suspended, frozen in uncertainty. But the true tragedy was not the lawsuit, not the show, not the lost season. It was what had been lost inside Amy. This was not a scandal. This was a woman overwhelmed, a woman stretched beyond human limits, a woman who had given every part of herself to a world that wanted more than she could offer. And when she could no longer give, the world took instead. Her laughter, once full, became something quieter. Her presence online became intermittent, unclear, tired. Her eyes, the same eyes that once glowed when she talked about her future, now looked like they belonged to someone trying only to survive the day. We are often taught to root for redemption arcs, but real life is messier than television makes it seem. Healing is not linear. Pain does not resolve because an episode ends. Trauma does not dissolve because the world is watching. Amy is still a mother. She still loves fiercely. She still wants to be happy. But now she stands in the quiet aftermath of a life that has been both witnessed and wounded by millions. And the question remains, what happens to a person when the world has already decided who they are? Does she fight again? Does she step away forever? Does she recover in silence? Does she collapse under the weight of expectation? We do not know, because the story is not finished. But what we do know is this: Amy was never just a reality star. She is a person who tried, again and again and again. And sometimes, trying is the bravest thing a person can do. And sometimes trying is what hurts the most. And sometimes trying is what hurts the most.
You know, bitch, pump your brakes. Slow down. Hell. What do you really truly think about Brian? I didn't.
Behind polished episodes and edited confessionals, reality television hides a world the audience is never meant to see. Contracts, negotiations, emotional strain, financial stakes, and silent crises unfold in private, while viewers watch only what is packaged for entertainment. But in the case of Amy Slaton and the suspended production of 1,000-Pound Sisters Season 8, the veil has torn open. What the world is witnessing now is not a storyline, it is a collapse. One that has shaken network executives, production staff, cast members, and family members alike. And yet the public still does not know the full scale of what is happening behind the scenes. The crisis began with a contract. Amy's Season 8 agreement, finalized in late 2024, was far stricter than previous seasons. According to production insiders, the network's investment had grown substantially. The show was no longer just a cable reality series, was a streaming staple, social media powerhouse, and a brand-defining property. With that status came pressure. The contract required Amy to appear in every scheduled filming day, participate in promotional events, maintain exclusivity with the network, and adhere to behavioral and legal conduct standards. These were not guidelines. They were binding terms. Violations carried consequences. For a time, everything seemed manageable. But real life does not pause for scheduled filming windows. Personal battles cannot be rescheduled to align with promotional campaigns. And no matter how many viewers feel connected to a star, connection is not support. According to sources familiar with the situation, Amy was already struggling before season 8 entered pre-production. The pressures of raising 2 young children as a single mother, financial stress, emotional exhaustion, and ongoing health challenges were beginning to weigh heavily on her. The cameras, instead of offering a platform for empowerment, had become a reminder of every moment she wished she could grieve in private. Then came the arrest. In early 2025, according to police records and local reporting, Amy was pulled over during a traffic stop in Kentucky. During the encounter, officers allegedly discovered a controlled substance in her possession. She was charged with possession, though no distribution charges were filed. It was a legal situation that many individuals face in silence. But Amy does not live in silence. She lives on screens, in headlines, in trending hashtags. The arrest did not remain a private moment. It was a spark waiting to ignite a public narrative. TLC, according to production sources, intervened swiftly. The network reportedly assisted with bail and legal representation, hoping to contain the situation before it became a scandal. But intervention is not the same as resolution. And while legal paperwork was being negotiated discreetly, something else was happening behind the curtain. Amy was unraveling. She was exhausted. She was overwhelmed. She was afraid. Not only for herself, but for her children. She no longer wanted the cameras. Reports indicate that executives attempted to accommodate her needs. Adjusted schedules, reduced filming days, on-set therapists, family coordination support, travel assistance. Yet none of it addressed the core issue. Amy felt that continuing to film during an ongoing legal case would expose her further, emotionally and publicly. She allegedly believed that continuing would place her mental health, parental stability, and privacy at risk. And so she withdrew. Not as a strategic move, not as a defiant stand, but as someone who felt she had reached the end of what she could carry. The network's reaction, however, was dictated by business, not empathy. Season 8 production had already begun spending. Locations booked, crew hired, equipment rented, marketing pipelines activated, promotional negotiations underway. Reality television is expensive even before cameras record a single frame. When Amy withdrew, the season did not simply stop. It collapsed. Schedules fell apart. Crews were left idle. Production timelines broke. Promotional deals froze. Financial losses stacked rapidly. From the network's perspective, this was not simply an emotional crisis. It was a breach. And breach led to litigation, according to legal filings circulating within the entertainment industry. The network is seeking approximately $1 million in damages. The breakdown reportedly includes production costs, crew salaries, unused locations, and accommodations, marketing expenses, and legal intervention following the arrest. The lawsuit is not merely about money. It is about precedent. Networks rarely pursue lawsuits against central cast members unless the disruption is deemed catastrophic. This case, insiders suggest, is intended to send a message not only to Amy, but to every reality star under contract. Personal crisis does not nullify business obligations. But lawsuits do not exist in emotional vacuum. And while corporate strategies unfold on paper, lives continue in silence. Behind the scenes, the Slaton family has been fractured by the conflict. According to individuals familiar with the situation, Tammy Slaton reportedly urged Amy to continue filming, emphasizing commitment to fans and the importance of completing their shared story. Amanda, too, was allegedly frustrated, believing that the family's narrative deserved resolution. But the lawsuit has effectively silenced them. Any public statement, any expression of support, any opinion shared online could potentially be interpreted as interfering with legal proceedings. They are gagged not by tape, but by liability. And so, the family that audiences watch laugh together, cry together, break together, heal together, sits in quiet isolation, scattered, waiting, unable to explain, unable to defend, unable to speak. Meanwhile, the internet does not wait for permission. Searches surged. Articles multiplied. Commentary channels speculated. Viewers asked questions. Rumors filled vacancies where truth has not yet been allowed to appear. Phrases like Amy Slaton arrest, 1,000 pound sisters, season 8 canceled. NTLC sues Amy began trending across platforms, and in the absence of clarity, narratives twisted into dramatized assumptions. TLC attempted to manage the situation. Amy was quietly removed from promotion materials. Interviews were paused. Marketing campaigns were suspended. Season 8 announcements disappeared. But silence in the attention economy is not control. It is fuel. Public curiosity is not simply interest, it is hunger. And hunger expands when fed nothing. At the center of this storm is Amy herself. According to individuals close to her, she feels betrayed. Not by the audience, but by the machinery that turned her life into consumable content. She allegedly expressed that she no longer felt like a participant in her own story, but rather an asset whose emotional struggles were treated as narrative arcs to schedule, edit, and monetize. One statement reportedly shared within legal discussions reads, "I'm a mother, not a storyline." And everything got worse when the cameras came back. Her legal team, according to early hints, may pursue defenses rooted in mental health strain, coercion, and exploitation claims. If they do, this conflict could grow beyond a lawsuit. It could become a case study, a reckoning, a challenge to the very structure of reality television contracts, production expectations, and emotional labor. Yet, while legal arguments build, Amy's life continues in real time. She is still raising children, still navigating divorce, still confronting health challenges, still facing court proceedings, still grieving the loss of privacy, still carrying pressure that most people will never touch. People often imagine that reality television stars are wealthy, but compensation in such productions is often limited compared to the revenue they generate. Legal fees, medical costs, and personal living expenses continue regardless of filming. With the lawsuit active, Amy is not simply emotionally overwhelmed, she is financially cornered. Her livelihood, her safety, and her autonomy are now entangled with the network's demands, and the show remains suspended. Season 8 does not have a release date. Cast contracts remain frozen. Filming cannot resume unless Amy returns, under conditions determined not by personal needs, but by enforceable obligation. The narrative that once inspired millions is now paused, not with closure, but with tension. A story half told, a chapter unfinished, a family silenced, a network wounded, a mother overwhelmed. What happens next remains unclear. Some believe Amy may return to filming under revised terms. Others believe she may leave the industry permanently. Some believe the lawsuit will settle quietly. Others fear it may escalate into a public courtroom battle. The only certainty is that the world is watching. But behind every headline, behind every article, behind every speculation is a woman who once laughed with her whole chest, who once believed she was allowed to hope, who once stood in front of cameras, not as a brand, but as herself. Her journey has never been clean, never easy, never simple. And now it stands at a crossroads between survival and collapse. This is not the end of Amy Slaton's story, but it is the darkest chapter, and the world is waiting to see whether she will break or rise. She will break or rise.
So we got a tattoo to remind us of that, and we probably got them in like our second date, so like a week after we met.
For years, Amy Slaton lived her life under the harsh glow of camera lights. It's a spotlight that was once a source of validation and connection with millions, but gradually became a cage tightening around her from every direction. The world watched her break, heal, rise, and fall, all through edited scenes, orchestrated dialogue, and episodes designed to entertain rather than understand. Her story began as one of resilience and hope, a woman fighting for her health, her identity, and a life she could hold with her own hands. But the version of Amy that lived inside her home, inside her heart, and inside the quiet spaces where the cameras were not allowed was a different person entirely. One who was tired, one who was stretched too thin, one who was running out of air. When the news broke that Amy had walked away from season 8 of 1000 Delby Sisters, the world reacted with shock, speculation, and judgment. Many assumed it was impulsive. Many believed it was dramatic. But few understood what had led her to that moment, a moment where stepping away felt less like a choice, and more like the only way to stop drowning. Behind closed doors, her life had unraveled into something far heavier than what the show ever allowed fans to see. The arrest that had been whispered about online was not simply a scandal or a headline. It was the breaking point of a woman who had already been walking a knife's edge for far too long. The charges were real. The public files existed. The consequences were looming. Yet the emotional storm behind those charges was deeply human and painfully complex. Amy was not only dealing with herself. She was a mother. She was a sister. She was a survivor of constant public dissection. And now, she was the center of a criminal investigation and a corporate lawsuit that felt colder and heavier than anything she had ever faced before. TLC's $1 million breach of contract filing against her did not just represent money, it represented severed trust, collapsed expectations, and a narrative that was suddenly slipping out of the network's control. Behind the legal terms and the paper filings lay a relationship that had once felt like family. For half a decade, TLC shaped her public identity, controlled her schedule, influenced her relationships, and determined what parts of her life were highlighted and what parts were discarded. She was seen by millions, but heard by no one. So, when she stepped away, when she said, "I cannot do this anymore," the network reacted not with empathy, but with legal force. They framed it in contractual terms: a breach, a failure to comply, a financial loss. But beneath that was a quieter truth. They were losing the narrative they had built around her. Amy's defense team understood the fragile intersection of her criminal and civil battles. They knew they had to paint her not just as a public figure, but as a human being unraveling under pressure no one could withstand. They knew that the criminal case could be used to demonstrate the emotional upheaval she was living through, the mental strain, the desperation, the fear. They knew that her decision to withdraw from filming was rooted not in rebellion, but in survival. But the network maintained a colder stance. From their perspective, her personal pain did not erase the financial losses. Contracts did not dissolve just because a heart was breaking. Legal experts who examined the case noted that TLC's position was structurally strong. Reality TV contracts are built to protect networks from instability, and instability was exactly what the situation had become. On paper, Amy had obligations she had stepped away from, but what the paper did not reflect was the exhaustion carved into her bones. The loneliness echoing through her home, the nights spent wide awake trying to hold together a life that was falling apart in every direction. And while the legal battle formed the public face of the conflict, the real damage was happening in the quiet spaces the cameras never showed. Production staff were left without work, not because of negligence, but because an entire ecosystem had been built on the emotional availability of one person who no longer had anything left to give. Tammy, who had been fighting her own war for her health, now stood in the shadow of her sister's crisis. The show was designed around the bond between them, and without Amy, the narrative collapsed. Tammy's journey, her progress, her triumphs, her setbacks, all of it lost its anchor. Amanda felt the weight in a different way. She too had been navigating her own challenges, but the show had made their struggles communal, intertwined, inseparable. When Amy stepped away, it was not just a professional shift. It was the kind of fracture that sends echoes through a family for years. They loved each other, but love does not erase fear, and the fear was everywhere. Fear of judgment, fear of loss, Fear of saying the wrong thing publicly and watching lawyers come knocking. So they stayed quiet, and silence became its own kind of betrayal. Outside their home, the world continued to spin stories. Hashtags surged, threads multiplied. Strangers analyzed Amy's life like it was a puzzle or a scandal or entertainment. Headlines did not describe her pain, they sold it. Every photo was taken out of context. Every decision was reduced to a soundbite. And while the world talked, Amy had to keep breathing, keep parenting, keep surviving. The more the media talked, the smaller her space to simply exist became. Her legal team prepared strategies that reached into the core of the industry itself. Mental health, coercive editing, production stress, hours of filming while emotionally depleted, scenes reshot to create drama, the quiet pressure of always being watched, always being judged, always being expected to perform suffering in a way that was digestible to the audience. If those arguments gained traction, they could change reality television forever. But for Amy, it was not about setting a precedent. It was about trying to protect what little of herself she still had left. Meanwhile, the lawsuit loomed like a shadow at the edge of every day. $1 million. A number big enough to break a person who was already breaking. The network wanted restitution. They wanted control. They wanted the narrative back in their hands. And Amy wanted peace, something she had not felt in years. Something that was slipping further away with every headline printed in her name. The emotional cost was immeasurable. Her children felt it in the air, the tension in the walls, the exhaustion in her voice. Her family felt it in the silences between phone calls. She woke every morning carrying a weight she did not know how to set down. Every step felt like walking through water, every breath like dragging something heavy behind her. She no longer recognized the person she had become while the cameras watched her life unfold piece by piece. The future of Season 8 remains suspended in uncertainty. Without Amy, the heart of the show is missing. Without her presence, the narrative loses its spine, its emotional core, its central question of struggle and perseverance. The network can attempt restructuring, spin-offs, or rebranding, but none of it replaces the ache of a story that was left unfinished. Fans who once felt deeply connected now wait in confusion and grief for something that may never come. And Amy, at the center of everything, stands in a space between past and future. Between who she was and who she might become, if she can find her way out. She is fighting battles that do not pause when the cameras stop rolling. She is trying to survive the collapse of a life the world believed it had the right to watch. And no matter how the lawsuit ends, no matter what the court decides, the emotional scars of this moment will remain. This is not just the story of a contract dispute. It is the story of a woman whose life became a spectacle, whose pain became entertainment, and who is now trying to reclaim her voice in a world that has spoken over her for far too long. The show may return someday, or it may fade into memory, but the cost has already been paid. The future remains unwritten. The story is still unfolding, slowly, painfully, quietly. Beyond the cameras, beyond the edits, beyond the commentary of strangers who never knew her heart.